Frid och shalom vänner och Gud välsigna er alla. Nu kommer det äntligen en uppdatering här. Jag ligger sjuk ett par dagar. Det har med blodtrycket att göra och tack för alla förböner som vi har fått här. Gud välsigna er. Det kommer 2 stycken videoklipp. Missa inte de här för de är så sanslöst intressanta. Det handlar om Jerusalem, judarna och islam också. Var kommer det ifrån? Vilka hemligheter vi får höra här. Gud välsigna er.
So the point behind it is you trust in the Lord and you let God show his blessing.
But here's the thing. God is using his people again as a, how do you say, a separator between the wheat and the chaff. As the how do you say, the filter, okay, to decide, you know, what is the good wine and what is the bad wine. And again, we're seeing, and let me make this clear, and I've been yelling this or saying this or speaking this from every platform that I can. Israel, God's people, we have become God's threshing field. We have become the series. I mean, again, the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu was the first person to be in your Congress, standing in the middle after the whole thing hit the fan, you know, with Biden and everything. The fact that it was the Israeli prime minister, the fact that Israel is going to be the main axis where this election is being taken place on, the fact that Israel in the Middle East is being the main instigator, I mean, the main axis of the whole war in the Middle East between the forces of evil and the relative forces of good. I mean, the fact that we're in the middle again just shows what a special people God's kids actually are. And again, I'm going to be saying this again and again. You got to make sure you're on the right side and know what side is right.
Yeah, and bro, your words are profoundly powerful. Your words are significantly important in this context. They really, really are. I think that we have beat this issue pretty good.
Let me finish one thing.
Yeah, yes.
Remember this as Jews and Israelis. We're not surprised. We are not surprised. We're not surprised that this is happening again and again. We're not surprised that we're being used again and again, that we're being abused. We're not surprised. We actually have celebrations and festivals that celebrate people who have done this in the past.
Yep.
So from our point of view, we are not surprised. But I want to extend a request from me as a born-again Christian. Please show my people now that not everybody's like this.
Yep. Show
my people now that not everybody hates us because we're God's chosen people. And if you believe that we're God's chosen people, and you understand the role that we're playing in, and you understand how we're suffering, please.
To just basically cut you loose for the next 25 minutes. So can you kind of talk to us about this?
Listen, James, you set it up perfectly. Let me just tell you why. You've asked the question that we need to answer. And this is the question. Your grandfather said, these characters that are in Islam, they don't really have any historical antecedents. There is nothing there historically to support them. Now, he must have known something that you didn't know, but that we now know. And to understand that, let's go ahead and look at the name Muhammad himself, because that's who we're looking for. We're looking for Muhammad. But by definition, that word, that name requires, if you were to write out that name, it requires 4 consonants and 3 vowels. In Arabic, mim, ha, mim, dal are the 4 consonants, and the 3 vowels are dama, fata, and fata, right?
That's right.
So you need to have 3 vowels, but there were no vowels in Arabic in the 7th century. You know that. I know that. Anybody that's done history and done any work on textual criticism of the Quran, looking at all the earliest manuscripts, they are only consonantal texts. And there's only 16 letters, not the 28 that we have today, because there were no dots that early.
It's changed. That's right. Yep.
But these 4 letters did exist. Mim, ha, mim, dal, or MHMD in English.
Yep.
So if there were no vowels, why are we pronouncing it that way? Take away those 3 vowels. Just take them away. And what are you left with? The 4 consonants.
Yeah.
MHMD. How do you pronounce MHMD in English?
Well, you'd say Muhammad, and that's what we would say. It's a slightly different in Arabic. Yeah, Muhammad, which is a very different. By the way, it's interesting when you don't have the vowels it also becomes very subjective to us, at least in our language. It's the same way in Hebrew, by the way. It's very subjective.
This is not subjective.
Yep.
Ash MD or Mimha Mimdal is all over the Middle
Yeah,
East.
that's right. That's where I was going to go. Yeah.
A well-known word.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all over our Bible.
That's right. That's right.
Stop and think. Who is the Muhammad in the Old Testament? 11 times in Hebrew. It's the same 4 letters in Hebrew
Yep.
that you have in Arabic, that you have in Syriac, that you have in Aramaic, in Nabatean Aramaic. It's all the same letters because they all borrow the same letters.
And when we say that, it speaks of the worthiness of praise, the worthiness of being honored and blessed. That's right.
The praised one.
Yeah.
It's not a
Yeah.
name. It's a
That's
title.
right. That's right. The
It
worthy.
was created by the Ugarites, the Ugarites, back in 1400 BC. It's in our Old Testament, Song of Solomon 5:16. Look and see. There is Solomon referring to altogether lovely. Muhammad. It's there in Hebrew.
Yep.
Muhammad is there in 1000 BC. So you can see why it's not a surprise for the Jews. Who is the Muhammad? Well, the Muhammad was always known as the Anointed One.
Yep.
Who is the Anointed One? The Messiah, the one who is yet to come.
Mm-hmm.
Saint Ambrose in the 4th century, we're talking about 300 years before, if Islam ever existed, it did, but 300 years before that, in the 4th century, Saint Ambrose, knowing and seeing what the Jews were claiming as the Anointed One, the Messiah, said, yes, we're waiting for the Messiah too. But you Jews are waiting for the Messiah to come. We are waiting for him to come back. And his name is Jesus Christ. So the Muhammad from the 4th century on in Aramaic and also then in Arabic, which came out of Aramaic, was always looking for the Muhammad to come. The Muhammad would be the Messiah.
Yeah.
Who? Jesus Christ. Yeah. So by the 7th century, and here's where it gets exciting, just look at the coins. Look at the coins in the 7th century and specifically look at Muawiyah's coin. Muawiyah has a coin that he comes out with in 663. He is now the first caliph. He is the one that starts the Umayyad Caliphate. And he's up there in Damascus. What's he doing in Damascus? Why isn't he, if he's a Muslim, why isn't he way down in Mecca, Medina? Because there is no Mecca. There is nothing called Muslim. There are no people called Muslims. There is no Islam that early, not in 663. Now remember, every Muslim listening to me is going to shake his head and say, this man doesn't know what he's talking about because Muhammad died in 632. You need to find him for me. We can't find any reference to him. I can't see anywhere that his name is. And remember, don't look for Muhammad now. Don't look for Muhammad with 3 vowels. Look for Muhammad and show me anybody that was called Muhammad that far south. None exists. But there are plenty of Muhammads all over the place. They're on the coins. They're on the inscriptions. And Muawiyah refers to it. He has an amazing coin that's a square, and he has his image on the coin, and he has a cross above his head. He's holding a cross in his hand. He's holding another cross in his hand. How could he be a Muslim if he's holding a cross and he has a cross on his head?
Yeah. It's a great question. It's absolutely.
He's a Trinitarian Christian.
Yep.
Has always been. If you have any doubt, look at the inscription on the Dam of Taif. There he is, and it's written in Greek. You don't write it in Greek if you're a Muslim. You write it in Greek if you're a Christian.
That's right.
And he refers to himself. His name is Muawiyah in Greek. The leader of the believers. What believers? Look in the upper left-hand corner, and you'll see a cross there. You could only be a Christian if you have a cross to identify yourself. So here he has this coin, 3 crosses on the front. On the back side of the coin is the letter M, which means 40. That's what it's worth. And below it is Mim Ha Mim Dal. There's the 4 letters we're looking for. The Muhammad, Jesus Christ, on the backside of the coin. And that's 663. This is a good 30 years after Muhammad would have died, if he even existed. All of the Umayyad caliphs, the Umayyad caliphs up until 680, because he was in power from 660 to 680. He was a Christian. He was living in Damascus. Then comes Abdul Malik. Abdul Malik is still a Christian, but Abdul Malik is an anti-Trinitarian Christian. Yeah. He does not believe in the Trinity. He's an Arian. Now listen, that's nothing surprising to us. We've had Arians from the time of Arian himself in the 4th century. We still have Arians today. The Jehovah's Witnesses are Arians. Anybody who does believe that Jesus is great, but that he is not God. And so he was against the belief of God as Jesus as God and the Trinity. So he builds the great Dome of the Rock right there in Jerusalem. You got it right behind you. I can see it behind on you over to your left. That's the modern dome. That was built in 1876. That dome did not exist in the 7th century. The only thing that exists that's original from in that dome are the 2 inner ambulatories, those 2 circular ambulatories, 8-sided shape. Look at the ambulatories. There's inscriptions all around it, and they are all attacking Jesus Christ. Say not three, for God is one and he has no son. That's now found in the Quran in chapter 4, verse 171. That's attacking the divinity of Jesus, is attacking the Trinity, and is attacking his sonship. God does not begetteth, nor is he begotten. That's now found in the Quran in chapter 112. And then it says, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. There is only one God but God, and the praised one, the Muhammad, the praised one is nothing more than a messenger of God. Bingo! This is not Muhammad, it's Jesus Christ, because all the other inscriptions are against Jesus. The whole thing shows that this is an attack, an anti-Trinitarian attack against Byzantine Christianity or Trinitarianism.
By the way, this is kind of a funny thing. Two points to the Muhammad issue. Sometimes, if you're in the Middle East, you'll hear the people in the morning. They'll say something like the very first prayer in the morning. They'll say something like "Salatu khayran min an-nawm, Allahu Akbar, Muhammad Rasulullah." Is one of their common things. But like you said, you just quoted one of the other prayers, Ya ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. You know, it's funny because when they pray, when they sing that prayer, when they say Ya ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, the way they say Muhammad, they pronounce it the way absent of the vowel still sometimes, which is very interesting how they say that. The praised one is the prophet of Allah, or the uplifted one is the prophet of Allah, and that's actually understood by anybody that has any semblance of education. By the way, there's still a lot of very common Islamic names that still are a takeoff of that semblance, of that structure, that construct. For example, a common name that the world knows right now, Mahmoud Abbas. Mahmoud is the same, it comes from the same structure. So your point is very well taken, and I want to throw this out your way because this is such great insight. If this is the case, then doesn't that just solidify what Islam has always appeared to be? Because to me, it's interesting when people seek to defend Islam, the ideals behind the defense of Islam is really more on the offensive. And the offensive seems to be premised in an idea of the fallacies of Christianity. And it would almost appear as though the Muslims have such a stronger or better understanding of certain points of Christianity because the very premise of their own religion is fundamentally based on a series of lies that were twisted from the original foundation of the scriptures. Is that a wrong premise to carry? Because that's kind of the way I look at it. It seems to be that this is why so many Muslims don't spend any time on the for example, the very foundations of the very things that they hold sacred, and spend all of their time attacking Christianity, or at least pointing out the flaws in Christianity. It seems as though it's just based on this big, tequila. You know, it's the same thing. It's like a big lie that they're premising on. And if what you're saying is true, which is 100% true, it is such a rock solid argument. Then that means that the creation of Islam is in essence another lie of the enemy to pervert the very truth of the word of God. Islam shouldn't even be called a world religion. It should be called a cult of Christianity, shouldn't it? I mean, that's my thought.
Heresy. It's a Christian heresy.
Yeah.
Now, stop and think. Who wrote that book called The Christian Heresy? John of Damascus.
Oh, yeah.
John of Damascus was right there in the court of Abd al-Malik. He was there in Damascus.
That's right.
He was there serving under Abd al-Malik when he built the Dome of the Rock. Who do you think saw this as it was happening?
Yeah.
Who was right there? His father was in the courts of Muawiyah. So Muawiyah and Abd al-Malik, the two great Umayyad caliphs, who one was a Trinitarian Christian and the other was an anti-Trinitarian Christian, down in Damascus, his family was right there following it. That's why in 730, when he finally retired, he wrote the Ishmaelite heresy, the heresy of the Ishmaelites. Who were the Ishmaelites? They were the Arabs who controlled the Umayyads. The Umayyads were Ishmaelites. They were not Christians from the context that came from the line of Isaac. They were not Jews that came from the line of Isaac. They came from the line of Ishmael. They did not have a prophet. They did not have a revelation. The Jews and the Christian, they're cousins because they trace their lineage back to Abraham. Both had revelation and they both had a prophetic line. The Ishmaelites had neither. But now they controlled all this swath of land from Spain in the west all the way to India in the east, from Turkey in the north all the way to Yemen in the south. They were the second biggest power of the day. Their only other superpower that they are in contention with, were Byzantine Christianity, who were Trinitarians. Now, can you then see why these Trinitarians were waiting for the Mahmad to reappear, the praised one, the altogether lovely? They were waiting for him to reappear the second time. The Jews were waiting for him to appear the first time. So here comes these anti-Trinitarians, started by Abdul Malik. That's why Abdul Malik is absolutely important. That's why the Dome of the Rock is absolutely important, that you've got behind you there. And you need to look at the inscriptions. There are no dots in those inscriptions, and there are no vowels. They have yet to be created. They were not in existence in 691 when that dome was built. That's why it's Muhammad, not Muhammad, that's there in the Shahada, because that's the first place we see the Shahada in one complete form on that dome. It's also introduced on coins by Abdul Malik. I've got one of them right here in my drawer. I bought it. It cost me $1,300 to buy. That's why the Shahada was introduced in 691 as an attack against the divinity of Jesus, the Trinity, and his sonship. No wonder John Damascus had to write the heresy of the Ishmaelites. And look and see what he's attacking. He's attacking this view that everything that this new faith, this new cult, it's a cult, this new heresy, it's all against Jesus Christ, his divinity, the Trinity, and his sonship. That's why Islam then was birthed out of that. It was not called Islam that early. There's no reference to Islam that early or Muslims that early. But they then became that during the Abbasid period. And that's why they were saying, oh, those of you who are our cousins, who are from Abraham, you have a prophetic line. We don't. You're waiting for the Mahmad. We have the Mahmad. And that's why they add those three vowels, the Dhamma, the Fatha, and the Fatha. So now it's Muhammad in contradistinction to Mahmad. Now theirs is Muhammad, but it's the same roots.
Yep.
He's no longer the anointed one. He now is a prophet himself. Once you have named him as your prophet, that is come to eradicate the Jahiliyyah, the ignorance of the earlier period. Remember, look at the word Jahiliyyah. See, in Arabic, that word never meant a people. It meant your own heart, your own Jahiliyyah of your heart. It was for every believer had a period of Jahiliyyah, a period of ignorance. They have reformed that to make a people that were called Jahiliyyah because that's the traditions. So once you have the prophet, a prophet has to have a book. Where do you go to find a book that quickly? You've got to start borrowing left, right, left, and center. That's why this book is full of stories after stories that are Jewish fables, that are apocryphal writings, stories after stories that are lectionaries and homilies, and yes, hymns to Jesus Christ. But they took out his name and replaced it with Nabi and Rasul instead. Can you then understand why they are now coming with what the Jews and Christians are waiting for? They're saying, we've got him. The Mahmad is Muhammad. And that's why the backstory had to be created. It took them 70 years to create that backstory. And that's why Ibn Hisham finally wrote it down in 833. But when they got the backstory for his biography, then they had to give his sayings. And that's why the sayings do not take another 40 years before they first get written down. But I'm even going to shut all that down right now. There is no biography from Ibn Hisham in the 9th century. There is no hadith from Sahih Muslim, Ibn Dawud, or Tirmidhi, or even Sahih Bukhari. They do not exist. This is yet to go up on YouTube. You're one of the first to hear about it. We now know where those documents come from, and they do not come from the 9th century. But that's for another time.
You're killing me. You're killing me on this. Okay, let me do this because I know you probably want to save it for a different time when you talk about this. I knew you were working on this for quite some time, and this has been one of the big questions. This is the question that pretty much that interview that Muhammad Hijab had with what's his name? The big scholar he ran away from. Yeah, that's right. I have a theory about something. You tell me if you think there's any validity to this. And I've really never talked to anybody about this. It's just been going through my mind. I've been keeping my ear very close to some of the pop culture sentiments that exist right now within the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. MBS is a very interesting person. When I think of Mohammed bin Shalomeen and his way of thinking, he's very loved on many levels. And in some levels, he's a little not liked. Right now, Jordan does not like Muhammad for several reasons. But one of the things that's really interesting is he is beginning to talk about the responsibility of the Temple Mount. And the big word being used right now is waqf. They're talking about this a lot, right? The thing that's interesting is in pop culture, the royal family in Saudi Arabia is allowing many of the popular bloggers and many of the people who have a big pull in Saudi Arabia to start sharing sentiments like Al-Aqsa, Al-Haram al-Sharif, they don't matter. It has no significance to Islam. There's a growing movement now that's beginning to put as much focus as possible back to Mecca, back to Saudi Arabia. And my theory behind it is they're beginning to recognize that with the change of information technology, with how fast people are gaining information, there's a growing population of people that are exposing things for what they are. And the more focus that they continue to put on the Temple Mount, specifically Muhammad al-Sharif, and they spend time looking at the in essence the square or the rectangular formation that's on the Temple Mount, they're going to start discrediting the existence of Mecca in the time of where they say Islam early formed. And I think there's people in Saudi Arabia that are beginning to see that. I think the royal family in Saudi Arabia aren't even the radical Muslims that a lot of leaders are. I think they're just trying to preserve the money and the wealth that exists within the city by keeping up this picture. What do you think about this? Is my theory. And
okay, James, we're going on to a whole different subject.
I know.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Instead of calling Mohammed bin Salman, let's call it MBS. That's his for short. Stop and think. MBS is now sitting on a huge wealth of oil money. But what's going to happen in the future when the entire West in the United States and all of Europe stop using oil?
Yeah.
What's going to happen in Saudi Arabia?
Done.
So what does MBS know? He knows something that you and I know as well. And that is, in order for him to survive, in order for the Middle East to survive, in order for all these oil-rich countries to survive, they've got to diversify. So what are they doing? You can see it. It's happening right now. They now control world boxing. They've now taken over. You go start with the entertainment industry. They now control world boxing. So all the major matches are now happening in either Riyadh or Jeddah. They're now taking over golf. They confronted PGA and they now controlled world golf. So all the major money that goes into almost every one of these major golf tournaments are coming from Saudi Arabia. They're now taking over Formula One. They're now the biggest tracks and the newest tracks are in Qatar and Bahrain, and they're in Jeddah, and they're going to be in Riyadh. So they're going to be pretty much controlling Formula One. The only thing that's left is now world football, which you call soccer.
Yeah.
You notice they're bringing in all the best players.
Yep.
Cristiano Ronaldo, Neymar, $330 million. Why are they doing this? Because they have to diversify. And the best place to diversify, to start making money for yourself, is in the entertainment industry. But not just there. They're also building 4 enormous universities, 3 of them, 1 in Riyadh, 2 of them outside of Riyadh, and 1 in Jeddah. These are they're putting so much money into them, they're going to be able to compete by getting all the best professors in the world, so they can compete with Cambridge and Oxford and Yale and Harvard. Now, the other thing they're doing is they're creating the NEOM project, NEOM, which is starting from Aqaba all the way to Tabuk, that 100-mile line that's going to have all these pods with all the best researchers in the world. And they're bringing them, and they're going to have all the research there in Saudi Arabia. So all the newest technology, all the newest education, and all the best entertainment will be in Saudi Arabia. That's why they are diversifying. Now, stop and think. In order to do that, they have loads of money themselves, but you need an awful lot of investment.
Yep.
Who are the best people to invest? Well, you know, the richest people in the West are Jews.
Yep.
You've got to go to the Jews. You've got to go to the Hollywood celebrities that control Hollywood. You need to go to the bankers that control most of our banking. You need to go to all the institutions in America that are mostly run by Jews. But in order to go to the Jews, you need to go to Israel.
Yep.
Bingo.
Yep.
That's why the Abrahamic Accords were a coup by Kushner. When he introduced the Abrahamic Accords, everybody wanted to be part of the Abrahamic Accord because they knew in order to get all this money from the West, in order to have all that they need to go to Israel, because Israel, if you don't go through Israel, you're not going to get the money. You're not going to get the investment. Now do you understand why October 7th had to happen? Because if you have the Abrahamic Accords, no one's paying attention to the Palestinians.
That's right. That's
who
right.
only make up 2 million people.
That's right.
2 million people out of 300, out of 230 million. They just make up a small little sliver. But they did the one thing that you're not to do. Remember, all of these countries are Sunni. The other country that's not Sunni is Iran.
Iran.
And what did Hamas do? They went to Iran.
Yep.
And they got all their finances from Iran. You do not go to the Shiites, not if you're Sunni. If you want to keep the backing from the Sunnis, you do not go and become a traitor to your own cause. So for two reasons, not only because of the fact that they're a pain in the side of anybody that's in the Middle East, they are going to destroy their future if Hamas does win. Secondly, because of the fact that they're going to the traitor themselves to Iran, the Shiites. That's why, notice they haven't said much about this war that's going on right now. They've stayed back.
Right.
There have not been any official broadcast condemning it, nor have there been any demonstrations on the streets. All the demonstrations that are pro-Hamas are here in the United States.
That's right.
And in Europe
That's right.
and
That's
in
right.
Britain. Why are they here
Yep.
and not in Saudi Arabia or in Bahrain or in Qatar or in Egypt? Why is it they have not taken one Palestinian? They've not brought one Palestinian into Egypt or into Saudi Arabia, which are right next door and they speak the same language. Because of the fact they're really hoping that Israel will win, because it is their future that is in doubt. That's why MBS, in order to do that, he's going to ameliorate and eradicate all that stands in his way. And the biggest thing that stands in his way is radical Islam.
Yeah, and I will tell you this, just you talk about Qatar or Bahrain or some of these other areas. I make myself very, very clear here. This has always been known. Those of us that know anything about the Middle East understand that Hamas has always been hated by many of the people in the Middle East because they are part of Islamic Brotherhood. Islamic Brotherhood has always been the tie for some of these insane globalists to twist and manipulate a position in a world that they don't understand. And I think it's even more ironic because I'm a Bible prophecy guy. I love Bible prophecy. When you think about Ezekiel that tells us about this attack that's going to come on Israel from the north, isn't it ironic that the nation that will object to the attack that happens in the future is actually Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia actually says, we object to this. So it's such an interesting picture. I got to interview the brother of Bibi Netanyahu, Dr. Edu Netanyahu. It was a great time that we talked. And he says the same thing. He says the growing sentiment in the Arab world, in the Middle East, is working with Israel is our ticket to the kind of growth that we need to see to be able to do it. And by the way, MBS made it very, very clear. He's shooting for the G7. That's what he wants. He's done with the G20. He wants to be in that more elite group. And to think about the kind of things that are happening right now with the meetings that he's having with Japan and some of the things that's happening, you're 100,000% on the money on this.
James, you can see then why MBS has to juggle two contradictions simultaneously.
Yeah.
2 years ago, he had an interview and it was a planned interview for the largest chain, the largest television there. And I did a whole series of 3 different episodes on it. And in the interview, the first question that came up is, listen, if you're doing all this modernization, you're creating the NEOM project, you're going to start bringing in Westerners from all over the world to be teaching our universities. You're going to have all these entertainment, these sportsmen who are coming with golf and all these other things. What are you going to do with the traditions? What are you going to do with all these references in the Hadith and the Sira that go against everything that you're doing, that go against all this Westernization? What are you going to do that? His response was this. He said, and he referred to Wahab himself. He referred to Ibn Wahab. He said, Wahab would be rolling in his grave if he sees what these Muslims are doing with his own traditions. He says, the constitution of Saudi Arabia will be only one thing. It will be the Quran and only the Quran.
Wow.
We will not go to the Hadith anymore. We will not go to the Sirah and the Tafsir and the Taqri. We will only go to the Quran. It will basically, he was saying, I'm a Quran only man. He did that 2 years ago.
Wow.
Now, that nobody picked up on. I picked up on it, and I got Al-Fadi to talk about it, and even Al-Fadi didn't want to talk about it because he has family still there. And I said, this is hugely important. We got to watch what he's doing. MBS is basically saying, get rid of the traditions. They are in the way. They are what keeping us back in the 7th century.
I have to get that interview.
The 9th century.
Was it done in Arabic, by the way?
It's all in English. You can see it all in English.
Oh, I got to see this. I'll get that link. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. That's fascinating.
But this happened 2 years, maybe in 3 years by now. So this I've been watching for the last 3 years. And I said, MBS realizes that he's got 2 opposing forces. And the only solution for him is to go back to the Quran. And I'm just clapping and saying, please go to the Quran.
That's right. That's right.
It makes my job a lot easier because there's so much ammo there in the Quran that's going to shut you down. That's going to make you absolutely irrelevant for the 21st century. So please, thank God, you just made our job easier. So that's something that, we need to all be aware of, and we need to be aware of how then to confront them and also where we need to aim our attacks.
Okay, so listen, I hate to say this, but we are completely out of time. Any closing thoughts on all this? Because man, it was a fast it was a fast fire session here. Any closing thoughts or any way you'd like to kind of close us off?
I think you know so much more than much of your audience, and I'm afraid that some of what we didn't went over their heads today.
Yep.
That's understandable because you're so quick. You're much more aware of what we're talking about, and that's why you get so excited because you are very much a part of the Middle East. You've been
Yep.
there. You've grown up. Though you've grown up here, it's part of your DNA. So you know so much more than what many people who are listening. And I'm a little fearful that a lot of people are saying, "What are they talking about? Where are they going with this? How do we know this is true?" Come to the conference.
Yeah.
Come to the conference. It's on the